Hey everyone, and welcome back to Suited Aces Poker, where every week we review hundreds of hands from poker vloggers across YouTube to bring you 10 of the best. We couldn't be more grateful for your support, but if you haven't yet subscribed, click that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a bunch. In this week's episode, we've got the magic of disguised hands, we've got mistakes that pay off in tournaments, and some really unconventional bet sizing. So sit back, relax, let's make a start. At number 10 this week, and Lexo is playing at the Seminole Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida. He is in a 5-10 cash game, and he says it himself, you gotta remember to bet the strong hands.
Getting started here at the 5-10 game, I have pocket nines, cutoff makes it $35. I call in the small blind, and the big blind makes the call as well. Our first flop here at Hard Rock is King 9-5 Rainbow. We make a set. I check, big blind checks, and cutoff bets $55. I think the cutoff player is going to be c-betting here with probably 80 to 90% of his range on this dry board, so I don't want to raise here just yet and scare him away with hands that he may even be drawing dead with, so I make the call and the big blind makes the call as well. The turn is kind of a sketchy card. It's a jack of spades. This does bring in Queen 10 for a straight. I check, big blind checks, and now the cutoff continues for a large sizing of $275 when he bets the flop, gets two callers, and now continues here on the turn. He's going to have a pretty strong hand or a big combo draw like a flush and straight draw. So when he bets this sizing, I think he can have some two pairs, maybe a set of kings, possibly a set of jacks, maybe ace king or aces. I consider what sizing I want to raise or if I just want to call. The cutoff player and I have a ton of history together, been playing poker for about 3 years. We don't normally battle against each other. We try to stay out of each other's way. So if I put in a big hefty check raise on this turn card, it might let him off the hook with hands like aces, ace king, king queen, him knowing that I'm probably not bluffing multi-way here. So I decide to just continue to trap with my set and make the call, which I think is most likely a mistake. I should just be raising here, trying to get the money in. By raising, I can get value from all of his one pairs, his two pairs, and his big combo and flush draws. I can also price out the big blind, who may have some of those hands as well. The big blind, however, makes the fold, and we're heads up out of position to the river, which is the 8 of spades. A backdoor flush gets there. I check, and he eventually checks back and shows pocket aces. And I am kicking myself here. Man, I wish I would have just raised on the flop. I probably could have won a much bigger pot. I'm pretty unhappy with the way I played this hand. Definitely a lesson to be learned. When you have a big hand, you gotta bet it. You can't count on anybody else to bet for you.
Number 9 this week, and Brantzen is playing at the Gardens Casino in California. He's in a 5-5-10 cash game, and this is exactly what happens when you float your straddle.
Back to some actual poker, I pick up pocket sixes in the hijack. There's a $20 straddle on, so I open to $60, the button and $20 straddle call. The flop comes 3-3-6. That's right, we flop a boat. The straddle checks, and here's my first decision point. Do I bet? Because my opening raise was to $60, it's unlikely one of my opponents is holding a 3. I check for deception, the button checks, and the turn is a queen. Now the straddle bets $135, and I decide to just call here. I want the button to come in if he connected, and I want to give the straddle an opportunity to hit a hand or continue bluffing at me. Great news, the button calls and the river is an offsuit 5. Now the straddle bets $300. If anyone has a 3, it's probably this guy. I go all in for my remaining $785. The button folds, but the straddle goes into the tank and makes the call. I show my hand and he tables a hand I never expected. 4-7 offsuit for a rivered straight. I don't often slow play, but I do think it got me the best result this time, and I'm happy with how I played the hand.
Number 8 this week, and Wolfgang Poker is playing at the Agua Caliente in Rancho, Mirage, California in a 5-10 cash game. And who else is making the fold on the turn?
We look down at the last hand of the night, the bullets, the pocket aces, and go figure, this is the last hand of the night, and it's definitely a crazy one. Stick it through. Pocket aces in the cutoff. The hijack, who's the action player from before, raises it up to $30, and I 3-bet him to 105, expecting to go heads up with the action player, but that's not what happens. When the small blind, the big blind, and the action player and the hijack put in the call, we're going 4 ways to the flop with a cool $420 in the middle. The flop comes 10, 5, 8, rainbow. I'm in the cutoff, and the action checks over to the hijack. He bets out for $105. He's not one to wait to put money in the middle. Do I go for the raise here, or do I just flat call the 105? With 3 other players in the hand, anyone could have 5s, 8s, or 10s, so I think I'm just going to put in the call here for $105. And now the small blind re-raises it to $250, a small raise at that. When the hijack just flats calls for $250, I think about my options here. I'm obviously not going for the re-raise. Can I ever fold here? The small blind is definitely representing a strong hand like a set. That's definitely what I'm putting him on here in the moment, but I still have pocket aces, and it's only around $150 more for me to call. The pot's huge. I put it in the middle, and the turn peels off the jack of clubs, completing the most obvious front door draw being 9-7. When the small blind just rips it in for $525, we're probably just gonna have to fold here, but when the hijack flat calls the 525, we're definitely out of the way. I just posture myself for a second and just look at my cards one more time. It's not often that you get pocket aces, and it's even less often that you're forced to fold them on the turn. So for that reason, I muck my cards here, and the opponents are off to a river in a nearly $2,200 pot. Hoping I made a great fold here. I'm going to be really embarrassed if they turn over like kings and queens. When the river comes the king of spades, the small blind sure enough turns over a set, pocket 10s, and the hijack mucks his cards. Really stoked on the way I played that. Even though I lost a good amount of money in the hand, I saved $525 on the river. Maybe I could be even folding on the raise on the flop. Either way, saving $525 is no small feat.
Number 7 this week, and close to broke, is playing at Maryland Live in Hanover, Maryland, in a 5-10 cash game. And let us know in the comments, what do we think the villain is playing in this hand?
At this point, we look down at 5 deuce of clubs, which is a pretty crappy hand, but I end up deciding to raise to $80. I don't know, this hand just seems to do good things for me. I don't know, we've won some pretty reasonable pots with it. There's no real excuse. At this point, I'm just trying to get hands for the vlog and mix it up. Unfortunately, the small blind has other plans as he decides to 3-bet to $225. The action folds over to me. This is a really puny 3-bet sizing, way too small out of position. I think you've got to be going at least 3.5x from the small blind, I believe. The action back onto me, and considering we're both playing like 5,000 or 6,000 effective, the last thing I want to do is fold with millions of big blinds behind. Yes, it's a little spewy, sure, I guess, but in reality, I'm super deep against a player I have a really good read on and has been really good action, so why not give him some action back, right? That's the point of this. I make the call, and we're going to have up to a flop that comes king 5-6 with a diamond and 2 hearts. Really, really wet board texture. What's a little more interesting is the opponent decides to check it over to me. At this point, I think that he can easily have ace queen, ace jack, a bunch of random holdings like that. So I end up taking over the betting reins and the betting lead in position and betting for $200. Equity denial is the purpose of this bet and the sole purpose of it. Unfortunately, he decides to make the call, looking for some improvement on the turn, which comes the deuce of diamonds. Yes, that now introduces a straight that was available on the flop, but a little, you know, that'd be a little ridiculous maybe to 3-bet 3-4. So when he decides to check it over to me, this is a really obvious spot for me to go for maximum value. I feel like I pretty much have the effective nuts here unless I'm up against specifically pocket kings that are playing it slow. And the other big thing to note is there's now 2 massive draws out there, 2 flush draws available. So when the action checks over to me, I need to go massive here. I bet $900. Remember we did it earlier with the bluff. It's great to be able to do this with a value hand. And after a very brief moment, my opponent does the unthinkable and raises to $2,700. I don't even think he knew what he was raising to. He just grabbed a bunch of blacks, a tower of them, and pushed them out in the middle. I'm never going to fold here. Like I said, if you have pocket kings, GG's to you, sir. I didn't call with a 5 deuce to make 2 pair and fold on this board texture. So I end up jamming, having him covered. He has around 23 or 2,500 remaining.
All in. What's going on the log? We're done now. All in. All in? Yeah. Twice or once?
Once or twice.
Depending what you have. You have to show me your hand. Then once. What? What do you do? One time. That's not, that's not how you do it? No.
No, you have to always be one.
Whatever you want. Twice is fine. Okay. I have 2 pair.
On both?
Yeah.
Yeah, then you good. 2 pairs good. Sick.
He ends up making the call. We agreed to run it twice after a little bit of negotiation. The first river card comes out of 3 of diamonds, which is just not fun, as it puts a 4-liner out there, as well as bringing the obvious diamond draw that was there on the turn. And the second one is even worse, as it comes the 9 of hearts. So 7-8 now makes a straight, and hearts get there. I show 5 deuce. He says that is pretty sick and ends up mucking. An unbelievable turn of events. I cannot believe my luck. What an amazing turn of events. 5 deuce, never lose. Isn't that what they say?
At number 6, Alex Duvall is in a 2-5 game at the Wynn in Vegas. And this really is the magic of a disguised hand.
The last hand of the night is very interesting, as I have ace-5 of clubs and there is an early position limp for $5. I raise on the button to $35, and there are 3 calls in total, including the early position limper. The flop comes king 4-3, 1 club. With about 140 in the pot, the early position limper leads for $100. Being that we are about $2,200 effective to start this hand, I am going nowhere with a gut shot to the nuts and backdoor club draw. I make the call and everyone else folds. The turn is the 9 of clubs. This time the early position player checks to us. With the nut flush draw here, I could certainly check and take my free equity, or I could bet and put a lot of pressure on some random King X type hands. I mean, this is what my opponent most likely has when he leads the flop, right? He's probably not leading with a set. For this reason, I bet 275 into about 340. My opponent makes a call and the river is the perfect card. The deuce of diamonds! I have rivered the wheel. This is very disguised and a card that I should certainly get value from. My opponent checks and I go big. I bet $900 into about $890. My opponent takes some time, but eventually calls. As I show my hand and scoop this almost $2,700 pot, my opponent will show King Jack of Hearts. This is a very, very wide call from my opponent, and I'm very glad I hit the river, because if I didn't, I most likely would have bet the same amount and got called by his king.
At 5, and your boy Ethan, Rampage Poker, is playing in a $600 tournament at the Bike in California. And this hand is a roller coaster, but these are the kind of hands that you're gonna have to win if you want to notch up first place in a tournament.
Okay, after break, we're in level 9, blinds have increased, and I pick up kings in the cutoff. Things are going pretty well here after the rebuy period is over. There's an under the gun open to 3,000, a hijack 3-bet to 8,000, and on to me. What a beautiful sight to see with all this action. The under the gun player also has a massive stack, so I'd love to somehow get a double up here. Cutoff has a pretty short stack, about 25k, so I decided to 4-bet to 19,000. Pretty small min click basically of a 4-bet, and when the button folds onto the small blind player, and he thinks about his decision for a while. This guy actually covers everyone at the table, and he ends up going all in. No way. Action folds back to the under the gun player, and he thinks for way too long and ends up folding. And when the under the gun player folds, the hijack snap calls. Me too, obviously. I have kings. I'm just never folding this. And we see that the hijack player actually also has pocket kings. Such a sick spot to not be able to win the full pot. Small blind has queens though, so we're a huge favorite to chop up his stack. Praying for no queen on the flop, and we win a massive pot. Let's roll the madness. What a sick turn, and I chip up massively after a brutal flop. Amazing turn, and I fade the board pair on the river. Oh, this one was really silly. It takes some time to figure out all the chips as we chop the main pot, but then I win the entire side pot. And ultimately though, after everything, I win a bunch of chips. I have up to over 100,000 in my stack. Wow.
Number 4, And Close to Broke is playing at the MGM National Harbor at Oxon Hill in Maryland. He's in a 5-10 cash game. And what is happening here? Sometimes it really does feel like you're playing in a home game.
Moving right along, middle position decides to raise to $20. I'm next to act sitting around the hijack late position. I decide to make the call here with King Jack offsuit. Definitely would like to be 3-betting this pre-flop. I don't like just calling this, although I will say this is a friend of the vlog and maybe we want to just mix things up. It is what it is. We end up going off to a flop that comes Queen 10-6 with 2 clubs. I look down at my hand, and in fact, I do have the King of Clubs, which is a really nice backdoor situation. Not to mention, we do flop ourselves an open-ender to the nuts. When the action starts off with my opponent, he decides to bet $20, and I pretty quickly decide to make the raise to $80. It'd be nice to get my hand here down immediately with just king high, and if I don't, I still have equity going out to the nuts. On top of that, we still have a backdoor to the second nut flush, and then over to this board texture. What's really appalling to me almost is my opponent decides to 3-bet this flop to $225. Don't know what this means. Maybe this is a sign of a really strong range. I can definitely put my opponent on a hand like queens, 10s, 6s, all the flop sets, all the 2 pairs, all the top pairs, top kickers, but with a draw to the nuts, it'd be really foolish to throw this away now. I can call and at least evaluate on the turn, which is what I end up doing. I make the call. The turn card comes the 8 of diamonds. Doesn't change a whole lot to the board texture. When I check it over to my opponent, he decides on betting $250. Seems like I'm still getting a reasonable price to outdraw my opponent. Again, the big thing that I need to say is that my opponent has about $700 remaining in his stack, and if I'm able to hit one of my gin cards, I still do feel like if it doesn't come a club, my opponent may have a really hard time folding. And even if it does come a club, because I am holding the king of clubs, I'm really doubting my opponent ever has a flush draw, especially when he decides to 3-bet that flop. Anyways, I end up making the call, hoping to improve, and we do. As the river comes the ace of clubs. Sure, that does bring a flush, but I'm not too worried about that. It's really hard to imagine he has any combinations of holdings that don't include the ace of clubs as a 3-bet on the flop. I mean, I have the king of clubs, the ace of clubs is accounted for, the queen of clubs is accounted for, so we're pretty much only worried about, I guess, jack 10 of clubs. Sure, that can exist, but I just can't be scared of one single holding. And it'd be really interesting and very crazy for, I think, my opponent to 3-bet a flop with a flush draw and a pair. Maybe it's possible, maybe not, who knows. I have no idea and no background on any of this player pool or really anything about East Coast poker. When I check it over to him, he decides to bet $400, leaving himself $300 behind. And if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and try to get all the money in the middle. Like I said, I've put him on a set this entire way. So I go ahead and make the jam here. He's shown strength the entire way through. I don't think this ace of clubs should change very much. He decides to call immediately. He instantly shows me that he has 10-5 of clubs. So, luckily for him, he was a sub of the vlog. So, I don't mind giving it over to him. Just really unfortunate with the outcome there. Did not think he could ever have 10-5 of clubs.
3 this week. And Ashley Sleeth is in a massive $3,500 tournament at the Seminole Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida. And here, I think the betting mistake that she describes really pays off by the time you get to the river.
The big blind is 500 now when the low jack opens it up to 1300. She started the hand with around 50 bigs. The hijack just calls. He has been in a lot of pots. And I'm on the button with the beautiful pocket kings. Got the Cowboys. I 3-bet to 4,500. Could go a little bit bigger, but I kind of just want to keep them in, to be honest. Both of them make the call, so we get our wish. The flop is pretty wet. It comes down queen of diamonds, jack of diamonds, 6 of clubs. A lot of draws out there, a lot of possibility for my opponents to have connected with this. So when they check it to me, I bet half pot. In a 3-way pot, half pot is actually a pretty generous size, I think. I maybe could have gone up just as an exploit in this particular spot, but that's what I did in game. I bet 7,500. The low jack makes the call. Hijack makes the call as well, so didn't lose anybody. The turn is the offsuit deuce. Pretty great to see on my end. If my kings were good on the flop, this is the best card ever to come off on the turn. They check it to me again, playing in flow. I continue for 18,000. But looking at the pot size now and seeing my stack, I guess I kind of miscounted in game. I only have a little bit more than the pot. in my stack. And with all those draws out there and with my vulnerable one pair hand here, I think I should just jam all in on the turn and let it ride, essentially. But I don't. I bet this weird sort of half pot sizing. I bet 18,000. The low jack doesn't take too long before she jams the rest of her chips in for 6K more. She had 24,000 total. The hijack goes into the tank before he makes the call. He had about 15,000 behind that. And then I'm sitting here trying to think, okay, should I just get it all in now? And I decide, yep, I'm gonna do that. So I go to put all my chips in and the dealer's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't do that. If you can kind of hear him here, he's telling me,
you can't raise again, because this less than half. It's only 6,000.
It's only 6K more. It's not considered a raise, so the action is not opened up. That is very unfortunate because I really just wanted to get it all in. Looking back, this is a pretty big mistake on my part. I should have just jammed the turn. But now that we're here, I just throw in the 6K, obviously. The river brings the 10 of diamonds. So every draw gets there. It's a really terrible river. And before you could even take a breath, Hijack jams the rest of his chips in. I mean, he snap jammed the river for, I think he had 15,000 behind.
Maybe it helped me. I don't know.
Now not feeling great. It's not a lot to call, but what am I beating? I'm not beating anything. So instead of being out of the tournament, I decide to fold my cards and see what my opponents had. First lady had ace queen, so I was way ahead of her. Second guy had king six of diamonds. He rivered the flush. After the hand, he said he wished he had raised the flop and got it in. And if that was the case, I would have been out of the tournament in 30 minutes. So the snafu on the turn, kind of hindsight, it saved me. I'm still in the tournament, but you know, that's pretty results oriented thinking. I do, going forward, wish that I had jammed the turn.
To this week, we're back with Rampage. He's still at the bike. He's still in that $600 tournament. And, set over set? But wait.
This hand with pocket sixes and +1, there's an undergun open to 22,000 with about 300k in stack. I decide on making the call with sixes. It's a good hand to play. The big blind calls as well. We're going to a flop three raise in position, which why wouldn't it come? Jack 7-6, 2 hearts, a bank with bottom set, and even better, the undergun player bets out 35k. Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of the raising because a set and 3 of a kind is going to be a pretty good hand. I decided to raise it up to 100,000 in position. The blind smartly gets out of the way, but this undergun player jams for 300,000 give or take total. I snap call, I show my sixes, and he has pocket sevens. Oh my god. That's pretty gross. I tell him nice hand, and big shout out to Steven for flopping set over set against me, who's a vlog watcher. The turn break, river 6! Oh my god! Oh my god! Jesus Christ. No freaking way. 1 outer for quads. Losing my mind. So is the table. Not only have I been steamrolling everyone and stacking everyone left and right, but now, first time in my entire life, I've hit a 1 outer for quads. Pretty brutal, pretty gross, and I still have to give a huge shout out to Steven, who watches the channel and who I sucked out on in this video. Big shout out to you for being a good sport. It must be pretty gross to end your tournament life from a 1 outer.
And at number 1 this week, playing in a 1-2 cash game, is Erick Mondragon the Fish, playing at the MGM Grand in Vegas. And there is some unconventional bet sizing on this one.
Now we're on the big blind looking down at Queen 10 suited. The under the gun limps and our Alaskan friend makes it 15 bucks. The small blind calls, I make the call, and we're going 3 ways to a flop of ace, king, jack, rainbow. Hell freaking yeah, we flop the nuts. The small blind checks, I go on and check, and our Alaskan friend goes on and fires off a wager of 16 bucks. The small blind calls the 16 bucks, and I'm gonna go on and show some aggression. So in my most manliest voice, I go on and I say, all right, I'm gonna raise it. I'm gonna make it 17. Alright, so I know 17 bucks is not gonna be enough. I have to make it 32. I did say raise before I put in those 17, so my raise stands. Both my opponents make the call, and we're gonna go 3 ways to see an 8 on the turn. Our nuts are not compromised at the moment, so the big blind checks to me, and I most definitely cannot check this back. So I go on and I ask the dealer.
What's the minimum?
$2 is the minimum bet, which makes perfect sense as this is a $1, $2 game. I need a sizing that's gonna throw off my opponent, so I go on and land on a massive bet of
$3. $3.
I didn't expect this. To my surprise, both of my opponents go on and make the call, and we're gonna go 3 ways to see a king on the river. Now that's a great card for me. If my opponents had ace king or better, they wouldn't just call the $3 on the turn. The small blind now checks. I'm gonna go all in for $121, and my only caller was my Alaskan friend who shows king queen. He river trips, but that's no good for my flopped straight, and we are gonna go on and take this pot down. Hell freaking yeah.
Was $3 the genius bet sizing on the turn? We laughed and laughed on this one. Congratulations on your number 1 spot, week 17, Erick Mondragon. Well, that's it, folks. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, the original video content is linked for you in the description box below. Do support those vloggers whose hands you enjoyed. Until next time, good luck at the felt.